forward to the next panel discussion. The topic is driving innovation and growth in GCCs strategies and implementation. The panelists are, let's welcome, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Mr. Mahesh Balaji, Head of Innovation, Adidas. Mahesh is a problem solver with over 25 years of industry experience. His current responsibility is to identify suitable interventions as well as delivering optimal solutions to overcome enterprise challenges. Mahesh holds a doctorate in computer science. A very, very warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Shreyans Dugar, Country Head India G2. In the last 2 decades, he has defined the culture for technology teams and increased accountability of work, created efficiencies in operations and support in a global shared services environment at G2. Warm welcome to you. Moving forward, our next panelist is Mr. Nitesh Ambuj, Head of Platforms and Innovation, Ericsson. With over 20 years of experience in the IT industry, he has carved a niche for himself as a dynamic leader. Currently, he drives innovation within Ericsson Group IT, leading co-innovation activities and forming alliances with startups and universities. Warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. John Dauber, Corporate Vice President and Managing Director, Novo Nordisk. John is renowned for creating inclusive and thriving workplaces. He also an avid supporter of groundbreaking science and innovation with an outstanding track record in the pharma industry. Everyone, put your hands together for John on stage. As moderator, we have Dr. Anilesh Seth, Captives Consultant, GCC, GIC, accomplished executive with an established track record of enabling MNCs. He holds a doctorate from ISB Hyderabad. As an independent strategy consultant, he continues to drive success in the GCC captive space. With that, over to Dr. Anilesh Seth. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, and a big welcome to our panelists here. Now, GCCs today are all about building value. And we talk about building a value bundle, and I'll use the word fascicle, a value fascicle. And this bundle or fascicle has various components to it. One of those components that we now talk about in today's terminology very avidly is innovation. Now, innovation is something new, something different that brings about a significant value and impact. Now, the intent here is not to debate what is innovation, because we can argue that there's a very thin line between innovation and improvement, and I really don't want to get there. But we've got a fantastic star-studded panel here. The GCCs here range in size from a few hundreds to a few thousands. So that means that we are going to get opinions from across the board, and it also means that small is also beautiful, when it comes to innovation at least. I wanted to start off by inviting each of the panelists to give one example of innovation, just to set the context, one example of innovation in your GCCs where the GCC is playing a significant role. John?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Yeah? So thank you again for inviting me, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm conscious that we are kind of between you and a tea break, so we'll try and keep it entertaining. So Novo Nordisk is a global pharmaceutical company, and we started here in Bangalore building a GCC about 17 years ago. But it's really grown a lot in the last 2 or 3 years, and now, as you mentioned, we're just more than 4,000 people across 17 different parts of the pharmaceutical value chain. Everything from clinical research right the way through to, as you develop a drug, then communicate about a drug, market a drug, and then obviously finance and IT and HR too. So the example I'm going to give you is rather kind of pharma technical, but it's in an organization that we call clinical reporting. So when we've got the thousands, hundreds of thousands of bits of clinical data in our hands that we then want to write up and send to a regulatory authority around the world. The clinical reporting team is stuffed full of doctors and pharmacists who are authoring those documents for the regulatory authorities, be that the US or China or Japan or Europe. And historically, they author those documents, and then somebody has to quality check them and make sure they're formatted in the right way for whatever authority we're engaging with. And that's a very manual task. It's going to take a medical doctor or somebody in a medical writer maybe 40 hours to review in detail one of those documents. But we're fortunate we have an in-house innovation team that we set up about 3 years ago. They went out into the ecosystem here and scouted for opportunities to try and rationalize those 40 hours a little bit. We managed to partner with a startup, and to cut a very long story short, that 40 hours is now reduced by at least 70% to just a very small fraction of the time it used to take to do that quality checking. That means that we can scale more here. It also means we've been able to export this technology and this collaboration globally, and makes a big difference to the way we interact to regulatory authorities around the world, and ultimately gets our drugs to patients faster. So that's my example.
Fantastic, John. Thank you so much. And Nitesh, I'll request you to jump in with an example from your side. Now, you head innovation globally for Ericsson, right? Right. So this is an example of having the nerve center here in India itself. Would be great to hear an example.
Yeah, it is like we were just discussing about Bangalore and being GCC being set up in Bangalore. This is a major advantage for us because we have a lot of talent pool, especially from IT background. And if you see, our talent pool is primarily based on different technologies, and then we are a technology hub as well. So utilizing that, there are a lot of innovation that we come up with primarily using IT technologies and latest technologies, AI, ML, cloud, storage, security, and all that. One example that I would like to mention is those who are from IT, they can relate to it, that we spend a lot of our money on storage and backup planning and DRPs. All of them might not be really important, and we may not use that. Especially if you look at the priority of applications, and if you have a priority of application that is level 5 or 6, which is hardly used, you still have the same DRP, same backup planning, and that storage cost is huge. So one of the innovations that we did was to reduce the cost of these applications, and that cost was more than 60 to 70% of the total storage cost. So if you tap into those areas where you are spending money for your DRPs, backup planning, storage, and on cloud, and if you realize that this is not important and this can be deprioritized, I believe that could be a great innovation, and we brought that cost down almost 60 to 70% on cloud with less storage. So that's what.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nitesh. Shreyas, you guys are a platform.
Correct.
Right? And therefore, the opportunities to do interesting things are clearly more visible, I would say. And it would be great to hear an example from you.
Sure, Nilesh. So G2 is like a B2B software marketplace. We receive about 90 million hits on our website on an annual basis. We have 2,000 different categories of software, 140,000 products listed. And the way we are, I would say, slightly different in terms of GCs, we also have a business in the region. So I think that gives us the power to innovate much faster. That gives us power to listen to our customers more closely. So we have teams here which are on the product side, on the revenue side, market research, data operations. So as and when we interact with customers, we hear a lot of feedback around what's working and what's not working well for them. And APAC being a very, I would say, a value-sensitive market, there's always this feedback from our customers around how are we deriving value from G2. And once we spoke to a few of these customers, we found there's a pattern, and this was a real business problem for our field sales folks. So what we did was we got into a room and figured out, looking at the data, how can we truly demonstrate the ROI to our customers. So the team got together, brainstormed, came up with a small pilot, I would say, And the fortunate part is our product managers, our engineers are all in the region, who not only support this region, they support our global customers. So we were able to spin out a pilot very quickly. We were able to show this pilot to some of our customers. We got some great feedback around how now they are able to see the ROI of a product, of a subscription that they pay to a SaaS provider. And eventually, that actually got inbuilt into our product itself. So now every G2 customer globally has access to the same feature, which got ideated, conceptualized, implemented, and kind of delivered in a production environment for the customers that we have at G2.
That is absolutely awesome. I'm going to just come back to you in a minute on this very same point that you've made. But first, let me go across to Mahesh. Mahesh is also heading innovation at Adidas, and would love to hear an example from your side.
Sure. Before I get into the innovation, I want to probably clarify certain things. When I say Adidas, at least in the Indian context, people recall only shoes. We actually make apparels and accessories. So the shirt I'm wearing is from Adidas, the trousers I'm wearing is from Adidas, just for your reference, right? Going back to the innovation, right? So the reason why I told you that is I'm sure all the retailers have the B2B and the B2C scenario, right? So we also have the same collection strategy where some of our customers owe us money, and we actually have people calling them and reminding them and stuff like that. And it's an army of people doing that exercise, right? So when we actually looked at the data, it was very evident that a significant chunk of that population, all they needed was just a reminder saying, hey, you owe us money, and then please pay us, right? And then we made that bit automated, and our receivables have already gone significantly higher because of that. So that's, again, I'm not at liberty to fully quote the numbers, so I'm going to reserve myself from saying it, but again, I take the credit for actually making that difference in Adidas.
Thank you, Mahesh. You know, Shreyans, you mentioned one thing, and I'm just going to come back to that. And of course, this is a question that's open to all, but I'm going to start with you. You talked about how you guys also have business operations here, which means you are customer-facing as well. Now, as teams in India, most of the GCCs are not customer-facing, right? And therefore, when you look at innovation, where do you bring in that domain knowledge into your team, right, so that it becomes relevant for them to think of new ideas and to be able to provide innovative value add to whatever it is they're doing? Where does that domain, how important is that domain knowledge, and how do you bring it to the table? In your case, it might be a little easier, but why don't you go ahead first?
Sure. So I think, great question, Anilesh. So I think, the beauty that we have here at G2 is we have a lot of collaboration going on across teams. So, typically in, let's say, large organizations, you would have a sales organization, a product organization, or a business operations organization. Here, because of the size that we are in, it makes it easier for us to partner and collaborate. We all work out of the same workspace. It's not like sales as a separate, enclosed area. It's all in the common floor. So the collaboration that we have across teams, be it sales, be it product management, be it engineering, that I think gives us the leverage. And two is even in our customer interaction. So we do a lot of these customer connect sessions with focus group of 40, 50 customers. We encourage our product managers, our business operations folks to be there to listen to customers firsthand. So, just by being there, the virtue of being there itself drives us a lot of domain knowledge around how do really our customers, how do our buyers interact with our platform. And that kind of helps us think of solution which has a real ROI. So every idea that you think of, at the end of it, has to have an ROI attached to it. It could be a financial ROI, it could be a user experience ROI, or it could be something which, let's say, gives a higher value to our customers. So everything that we ideate has to have an ROI attached to it. And I think this collaboration, this partnership, really, I would say, sparks that thought, imbibes the domain knowledge, which is very essential for, I would say, any GCC for that matter.
Fair point, but you mentioned one thing, which is that a lot of the folks are in touch with the customers, right? And given your size, maybe that's easier. Yeah. How would that translate to a larger GCC? You said 4,000 people, John. So how does that work for you?
Actually, in a similar way. We're very fortunate as you. We have an India sales affiliate also based here in Bangalore, not in the same site, but not so far away. And that allows us to really to work on that collaboration, to be able to really understand deeply the needs of the customer, whether the customer is an internal customer or whether it's a doctor or a patient. And it allows our teams in the GCC to really get a little closer to it and to be able to fuel their curiosity. I think the other thing we do with the innovation team that we have is we really encourage them to go and sit with the various functions, understand deeply the various functions, and that relies on having the right mindset in that team, hiring the right people, but being able to kind of deeply understand them and then build the bridge back into the solutions environment, perhaps outside the office.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
I echo what the gentleman said. Additionally to that, at least in Adidas, what we also do is we actively promote job rotation. So basically, we bring people from the markets into GCCs and specific groups. We also encourage people from GCCs to go spend short-term assignments in markets and other locations. So that does actually help and kind of helps us to get the true challenges that's there in the edge.
Anything?
If I could add one line, that what we have seen from our experience, that innovation doesn't happen in isolation. So when we talk about expertise from domain, from business, when we do ideathon or hackathon to generate ideas or to see the feasibility of those ideas, we also allow members or innovators to connect with each other. So technologists will connect with business stakeholders, and then they will connect with domain, and then they form a team that will bring the innovation. So that way you have innovation team, let's say 3 to 4 people, a technologist, a business expert, and a domain expert, and then that innovation normally is successful. So yeah.
Got it. No, I think you'll all agree, obviously, that people are centric to any innovation strategy. Now, Henry Ford said, and I'm quoting, "I am looking for a lot of people who have an infinite capacity to not know what can't be done." Right? So that's what Henry Ford said, and I think it's very relevant in our context. But the question is, how do you find the right talent? Do you look for certain traits because you're developing this innovation culture, or do you develop them? Anybody?
So I'll tell you how I do it. Maybe there's other better ways to do it as well. So there are two things, right? There's an organic thing and there's an inorganic thing. So what I mean by that is whenever I work with any operations, anybody in the organization, I keep looking for inquisitive people who are curious and motivated to solve problems. Do not wait for the solution to come from the outside, but actually, be the solution themselves, right? So I keep looking out for those individuals within the organization. And it's easier for me to actually encourage that and then get them into the group and work. And externally, events like this and organizational networking events does actually help. And then, at least in the current organization, we have started marketing the essence of innovation, the change it is going to bring to the business, the impact an individual will actually have on the organizational outcome. So we try to keep that as transparent to the candidate or the prospect as possible, so that it's easier for them to see the value as to why they should actually come and join us.
I agree. And I think, one of the things that we try to do is create a genuine culture in the organization of speak up, challenge, and question. I work for a Danish company. Sometimes Danes do it a little bit too much. They challenge everything and question everything. But what we try to do with our GCC colleagues in all domains is really ask them, don't just do the process, but look how we can optimize, look how we can do more. Could we do something differently? Could we collaborate with a different department to make something a bit sharper and a bit better? So to answer your question, yeah, we hire for those attitudes, but we also culturally develop them also.
I'm going to drill a little deeper into this question, which is, if you were interviewing yourself, I guess you would look for those traits. You would ask those questions, right? You would look for those traits. But now, your recruitment team has to go out there and look for a bunch of people, and they in turn are probably going to be partnering with a third-party recruitment organization, right? How do you make sure that idea that you have in mind, that trait that you have in mind, is appropriately translated so that you don't get too many folks filtering up to you who you really are going to start rejecting? It's a detailed aspect that I'm getting into.
Sure. If I can start and have a beautiful, or I would say G2 has a beautiful approach to address this. So at the time when any position is opened, each manager, along with the JD, is expected to create a hiring rubric, which basically lists down the traits that they are looking for, in the candidate. And along with the traits, they also have to mention who are the interviewers for that certain trait. So to explain this further, the culture that we, or the value system that we, promote is called the peak values, which stands for performance, entrepreneurial spirit, authenticity, and kindness. So for each of these traits, we clearly demarcate who is the assessor or who is the interviewer who will assess the candidate for those traits. And to his point about curiosity, that is bucketed under entrepreneurial spirit. How much drive do you have to really go above and beyond? What have you done in your prior experiences where you have shown initiative to step out of your core role and create value for the organization? I think those examples and those situational questions help us ascertain if a candidate carries that drive and will be able to succeed in, let's say, ideating, innovating, or stepping above their core responsibilities to help the company grow faster and further.
That's very good to know. You really outlined your overall methodology, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to ask a related question, and maybe, Nitesh, this is for you, which is, did you want to comment on the previous one?
I just wanted to comment, starting with the Henry Ford example that you gave. He had also one saying that if you would have asked people what do they need for faster transportation, they would have opted for faster horses, but he built cars. And then there is a very unique anecdote about Apple versus Amazon. So what Amazon does, their board of directors meeting, there's one chair empty because that is for the customers. So they improve on the feedbacks. And what Apple says that we build products that people will need in future. So in organizations also, when you are hiring or building teams, you need both types of people. A few people who would be thinking out of the box, as John was saying, very creative, different, but you also need a set of people who are improving things, who are bringing innovation to existing set of products and services. And you need fine balance. So especially large organizations like us, we need people from both of these thoughts. Yeah.
Great, and thanks for that add-on on the Henry Ford comment that I had made. So let me bring the next question to you. What did you do, or what do you do that fosters a culture of innovation in your GCC and allows that balance that you just talked about to take place? And how do you create that mindset? Does a stated and visible drive towards innovation help attract and retain talent? It's a big question.
Yeah, so I guess it also depends on the maturity of the organization. And then when I started, or anyone who's starting new, they would have to, first thing they would generate is ideas. Unless you have ideas, you can't bring any new innovation to the table. So in building the innovation cycle or culture also, you need to follow this cycle as what is your maturity level. The first step is you need to bring a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, and you also have to encourage people to come up with those ideas. That's the first step. And that's how we monitor the ROI also, that how many ideas we generated in a month, in a year. The second stage of this maturity is that how many of those ideas are implemented. And that is a huge challenge. The second step is a huge challenge for any organization, because you can come up with ideas, but when you go and implement that becomes very challenging. So that is the second level of maturity, and then you do the ROI based on where you implement, like how many ideas you generated and how many you implemented. So that's the ROI for you. The third stage, which is the highest level of maturity, would be that whatever ideas you implemented, what is the impact of that idea on your top line and bottom line? How much revenue you generated or how much cost you saved? So the culture also goes accordingly. So initially you try to bring people to come up with ideas, then you encourage people, incentivize them, help them with rewards, recognition, so that they can implement. And the third part is you have this patent, trademarks, customer rollouts, implementation, so that you can actually celebrate those ideas that is implemented. So that's how the culture is also going.
So how do you... Did you want to add something?
Just to add to that, and I think it's super interesting because it's a very systematic approach to bringing through ideas and then maturing them and implementing them. And I learned something straight away. You know, in my organization, I tend to take a little bit more kind of cultural and human kind of approach. in so much as, creating that culture that people are allowed to challenge, they're allowed to ask. And to do that as a leader, I've got to be present. I'm not going to sit in my corner office. I'm going to be sitting with people, I'm going to be talking with people, I'm going to be asking them, how's this working, how's that working, how can we make it better? And role modeling that with my leadership team and the one below that and the one below that, so that people feel that when they come up with an idea, it's listened to, it's documented, and it's acted on. And if it doesn't work or we can't make it work, then we also explain why not. So I think actually the two approaches are really, really beneficial.
Fantastic. What is the dependency of the GCC in executing innovation ideas? So you've got a bunch of ideas, you have an ideathon, some of them have been selected, right? But are the budgets owned by the GCC or are they owned by the parent company? Where does that come from?
I can probably go first. At least in Adidas, we have drawn that line very clearly, right? So GCC innovation budget is fully controlled by me, right? So that's the commitment from the leadership saying, hey, we want to see innovation happening in the operations, in the GCCs themselves, right? So, but there is a parallel innovation team that works on the products, the different other products that we actually deliver. And I am part of that overall group. So we do share ideas, exchange process and stuff like that. But from a budgeting perspective, I own the GCC innovation budget, and I am directly responsible for reporting the return on that back to my leadership team. And that helps a lot because I have the accountability and the control. Yeah, so that I have had scenarios where I had to actually, depend on business for some of those budgets and stuff like that, where situation was probably, not that great when the priorities conflicted. Yeah.
So let me talk about things with respect to IT. So first is we don't have a separate innovation budget. It's part of everyone's charter. And the reason why I say this is, I spoke about peak. A significant amount of weightage is given to your entrepreneurial spirit, how much you're innovating and how much you're participating. We spoke about how many ideas did you generate, how many did you implement. What we do is twice a year, we have 2 events for our teams. And again, these are 2-week sprints. One is a lot more unstructured one where people are allowed to ideate on their own, allowed to develop it on their own, and at the end of this 2 weeks, showcase what they have built in the 2 weeks. That's a very unstructured format. And the second half of the year, we have a very structured, where we give a theme and people have to come up with ideas, which is then groomed by one of the senior business or tech folks, and then the team start working on it. And at the end of 2 weeks, you are still supposed to present and then you award a winner. So this doesn't require a separate innovation budget, but this becomes the charter for everyone to participate, to feel energized, and to get ideas which are grounds up, which they know will make an impact, subject to, of course, customers validating it. So we do that like twice a year, like clockwork.
Nitesh, would you like to?
Yeah, a couple of things. Like we have experimented a lot with all these models where you have a fixed innovation budget. Let's say $10 million is fixed for innovation. Then we realized that after one cycle, we utilized only 1 million SEK and $1 million and rest is not utilized. Then the next part is where you actually bring these innovators in front of business owners and you say that you pitch your idea. If it is like, business will sponsor that. That's another approach. And third approach, which I personally feel is really relevant and which works in most of the cases is you don't fix any innovation budget. What you do is you prioritize these ideas in your regular financing, regular budgeting process. So if there is a new idea which is really relevant, it would be prioritized in your regular budgeting part. That's why you are bringing innovation to your business. It's not a separate unit working in isolation. So I personally prefer the third model where you do not have a fixed budget, mostly operating budget, and then you connect it with business whenever needed.
And for us, it's a little bit like Mahesh's example. But first of all, we have an innovation team budget. So if I go back to the example I used at the beginning, then the innovation partners would be looking with the business units, finding a problem, looking for a solution. We would then use my innovation budget to incubate that solution. Once we've got proof of concept, we're then back into the business unit to try and risk share and resource it and scale it. So it's kind of a bit of both.
Fantastic. One of the things I've heard, and I'm not sure it applies to any of your organizations, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this question anyway. In one of the morning sessions, we had a gentleman from Shell, and he was talking about how theirs is a 100-year-old company. And not Shell specifically, but there are so many organizations from the US, Europe, etc., who have these 100, 150-year legacies, and they have set up GCCs in India. And when they've done it, they've set up innovation centers. And what we are seeing happening there is a reverse osmosis, so to speak, where we are finding a fair amount of the innovation culture that has started seeping in the India Center is now moving back to the parent organization. Is that something that you guys relate to as well?
Not in this current role. Interestingly, you mentioned we celebrated 75 years, but our GCC is just 24 months old. Yeah, so in India, of course. But in my previous role, I could really see that, right? So the innovation that was actually being done here has started going back into the head offices, where because of different reasons they had probably not focused on it or probably not channeled it and stuff like that. And once they start seeing business outcomes and values coming from GCCs through innovation, they actually are more than happy to actually accept it and then imbibe it as part of the journey. Yes, I definitely can relate to that thought in my previous organization.
Got it. Anything you guys would add?
Again, similar to the Adidas story in my earlier organization, we had a separate, let's say, innovation group here. And the only point I would like to add is starting that point of innovating here and sending it back was always challenging. The first few conversations were uncomfortable, were hard, tough ones. But I think as and when business started or the HQ started seeing value out of these ideas, out of these small pilots that we did, that's when they realized the program that we have here should be scaled globally. And that's when you reach a stage where you have acceptance from the HQ saying, yeah, what you guys are doing makes sense, and let's now scale it up globally.
Got it.
So one thing I would like to add, that we are in similar situation. We are 140 years old company, again from Europe, and we have 60,000 plus patents. Most of the patents we are using right now as well. What I have seen that works most of the time is collaboration, cross-collaboration. If you bring ideas from just one center and then try to implement, it may not work because there are a lot of reasons. I would not name all those reasons, but different reasons, and then it doesn't work. But when you collaborate, and then that's where the cross-collaboration that you are collaborating, we have a team that consists people from India, Europe, US, then those ideas really work because you have buyers from everywhere. All the stakeholders would be the buyers. So we normally prefer to have a team which has members from all across the globe.
Got it. John, would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, finally, and I guess my comment is not pure innovation in terms of tech that we might talk about, but for sure, we're a just over 100-year-old company. We've got a rather kind of slow-moving corporate office, but in the GCC, with the culture we have, with the collaboration that we've got, we're a bit more agile. So we can solve things quicker because we're 7,000 kilometers away from HQ. And that's mindset, that collaboration has really inspired the Denmark office to perhaps wake up and do a few different things. So it's been a bit more about mindset rather than tech. Yeah?
So it sounds like the remoteness from HQ is enabling you to move faster. Right. Fantastic. Brings me to another question, which is, you talked about balance, Nitesh, right? But let's talk about the balance. You talked about the balance between two kinds of innovation. You talked about maybe some enhancement on your existing product offerings, for example. What about business as usual? How do you balance out the culture for business as usual and innovation, both residing under the same roof? Are there different policies out here? Are the policies the same? Can one person from here jump across to the other team? Is that an elite team?
I believe we can accept this fact that as humans, we always resist change. And those who are in business owners' role, they would always like to continue with how it is. But there is always a scope for change. If we can convince business owners that the improvement that we are bringing through innovation is actually beneficial for you, and that's where this trade happens. And that's where the innovators and business, like if you are following the innovation model, it comes later when you have done the feasibility, POC and all, you have a connect with innovators and business. And what we do in our case is that we don't leave innovators directly in front of business, because innovators are normally technologists and they cannot have those sales speech. And that's where we bring the innovation team in picture, because they can sell this innovation on behalf of innovators to businesses, and that's where it works. So I believe everywhere there is a chance of improvement, even in existing business. We just have to convince that real stakeholders that this is how it will work in future.
I'd just like to say one thing in addition to what they shared. I think business as usual is a given. It's non-negotiable. If there are agreed SLAs, turnaround times, metrics that you need to meet, they are given. They're non-negotiable. That's what builds the credibility. If you're able to show that consistently over a period of time, the resistance to listening to ideas, which is over and above this, gets lesser. So by no means you can forget BAU and jump straight to innovation. Your BAU has to be taken care of before you can think about how do you really improve processes.
So at least what we do is, again, perform, transform is the two big buckets, right? So everybody in the organization has some percentage on the perform and some percentage on the transform. And basically what role they play kind of defines how much time do they really spend. If they're actually on the innovation side, they spend more time on transform, little time on the perform to make sure they're not sitting in ivory tower and thinking of stuff on their own. But if you're actually in the ops, then your performance percentage is higher compared to the transform. That's how we have tried to manage that bridge.
I'm just going to add one last comment from my side, which is from whatever we've heard today, one thing is very clear, that this innovation wave that we have going in the GCCs is all set to cascade into a global innovation tsunami. And I think that's really what's headed down the road. I thank you guys so much for participating today. Thank you so much.
GCC Workplace Awards 2024, presenting partner LinkedIn, co-presenting partner Alive Health, initiative by Zyoin Group, in association with Brigade Group and Adrenaline, powered by WeWork, banking partner Axis Bank, knowledge partner CBRE, strategic partner KDEM, GCC partner Thalaron Global, gifting partner Chiari,